Coach Mo.
Hey, it's Coach Mo.
Hey, it's Coach Mo.
Knowing what you want to accomplish professionally is just the beginning. I'm Coach Mo, and this podcast is for young professionals and emerging leaders who want to lead, achieve, and succeed at work. You've got executive ambitions and the drive to get there. Join me for perspective, insights, and thought-provoking questions that only you can answer. Today's episode starts now.
Tuesdays with Coach Mo.
The year is 2277, and women have finally achieved pay equality. Startling fact, huh? Absolutely. In fact, I'd say it's a stunning fact, recognizing that we've actually increased what was reported in the most recent Global Gender Gap Report when compared to the previous Gender Gap Report. We've actually added 55 more years to the estimates that indicate when women will achieve pay equality. How is this even possible? We've all witnessed the dynamic movements of the Me Too movement, Time's Up, and He for She, amplifying women's voices urgently calling for fairness, respect, and equality. Just as dynamic as this wide body of research that shows that gender-diverse teams make better decisions. They drive higher levels of innovation and are more productive than homogeneous teams. All of this comes as no surprise that the roots of gender inequality in the workplace are deep and often hidden or, in fact, unconscious. Yet you and I must do our part. As a high achiever in pursuit of fulfilling your executive ambitions, this topic deserves your unwavering attention in these three particular areas. Number one, be an informed voter when casting your support for one political candidate over another. 2, be an informed and engaged employee who challenges gender pay disparity at your organization and chooses to never settle for the status quo. And 3, on an individual basis, continuously developing your negotiation talents so that you're effective in earning that salary and compensation aligned with the value you deliver. Now, although the World Economic Forum has shaken us with this information released in the recent Global Gender Gap Report, I believe pay equality will happen sooner than that if, in fact, my podcast guest for today has anything to do with it. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Jacqueline Twillie, who's engaged in purpose-driven work as she is the president at ZeroGap, is a master negotiator and women's leadership program strategist. In the conversation you're about to hear, Jacqueline shares her perspective on the signs of hope that the wage gap is in fact closing. She identifies entities that are modeling the way for positive change, and she speaks about the steps individuals can take to make a difference. Let's turn now to today's episode, Clarity of the Disparity, a pathway for closing the gender gap. What is the current reality of the salary gap between men and women?
So the reality, unfortunately, is not pretty. We see the wage gap hasn't moved much in 50 years since the equal pay legislation was signed by JFK. And so most notably, we see the big branded equal pay day in April that touts somewhere around 70 cents on the dollar is what women earn. That's not completely accurate because we know that Black women, Latin women, and Native American women far way less than the 70%, with Latina women's equal pay day falling somewhere around November. So that is where we see we haven't made much progress, but I do feel hopeful because there is a resurgence in the awareness of this wage gap, which means we have a great opportunity to close it.
Mm-hmm. And what's contributed to that resurgence of awareness?
I believe that one of the major catalysts was in the Obama administration. They had a committee that was stood up for women and girls, and they did a lot of work reaching out to corporations, asking them for a commitment to close the gap and also to be more transparent with their pay practices. And that was a catalyst to many other conversations and a lot of the stigma and shame around women in high visibility roles speaking up and saying, I too am impacted by the wage gap.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So under the Obama administration, some legislation taking place, women speaking up, speaking for closing of the gap, additional trends possibly that are contributing to this gap being closed, Jacqueline.
So some of the trends that are contributing to the gap closing are related to some of that legislation that was birthed a few years back. So in some states, they have made it illegal to request that an applicant share their salary history. And the reason why that is important, and there's very early research coming out of Boston on this, that has been beneficial to Black women and to Black men specifically is what they've studied, because we know that there is a wage gap, period. That's a fact. But when companies are not aware of what you're currently earning or what you previously earned, they are more likely to offer the candidate the market rate, which is why we see significant gains in Black women and men when it comes to them using this legislation to their benefit to close the gap. So they can still ask the question, but it's not a required question anymore. So another factor is increased awareness of negotiation skills. And believe it or not, there are many successful women who are late in their career who are just now negotiating for the first time. So we look at access to childcare also as a contributing factor. We look at flexible work schedules also as a contributing factor. And this equal pay gap is not a singular cause to it. It's very multifaceted. So when we break down all of those different factors that influence this problem, we can look at all of the different ways where we can impact the solution. The way that I choose to use my life's work to eliminate the gender wage gap is by teaching women, one, to negotiate, and two, helping women to advance in leadership roles. But we also see that having more women in politics who are driving legislation also reduces the wage gap. And so, like I said, so many factors, and there are so many solutions out there.
If you'll kindly expand on the comment you made in reference to like the childcare. Now, what's changing there?
Yeah, so when you look at childcare, when women don't have access to childcare or elder care, what happens is they become the primary caretakers. So the change in childcare that's benefiting women is there are more programs that are becoming available in expanded hours where women can work different hours and send their children somewhere safe. Mm-hmm. That allows them to work, which allows them to have different schedules, thus impacting their wages and their earnings. On the other side, we see a very strong movement of men being more involved in the child care, whether they're stay-at-home dads or they're just sharing the child rearing responsibilities. That again allows women the flexibility to earn, and thus they're not forced in all cases to opt out. We know in some cases women still will opt out, and that is a personal choice, and that is a beautiful choice to make. The goal here is to increase the options with the child care as well as elder care, so women have a choice on how they want to structure their lives.
Okay. And, you know, as I was listening to you, what came up for me is under the umbrella of negotiation of salary, something I know I stress with clients is compensation, right? And that the compensation is a bundle or a basket, let's say, of combined benefits. So when you speak about the wage gap, are we just speaking strictly on the salary part, not the overall compensation package?
Well, that's a complicated question, and I pause there because when you're looking at your overall compensation package, mm-hmm. and when you're looking at the wage gap, which was where conversation started, there are some ties to the wage gap and compensation packages. But then there's this other factor, which is very relevant to the wage gap, is the type of work that women select to do. All right, so if we pivot past that point and we talk about the compensation, so many women that I've worked with were unaware that they could negotiate childcare reimbursement, childcare assistance, even summer care. And so when you look at a total compensation package, there are most certainly things like that that women should be including in their discussion at the senior levels of their career where they can negotiate these things. Now, someone who's very early on in their career, maybe a first-time mid-level manager, they won't be able to request childcare reimbursement because this is based on the value that you add when you negotiate your compensation package. But there's so many different things that you have to educate yourself on before you walk into a negotiation, which is why I tell women, don't wing it. You want to go in prepared to have this thorough discussion once you receive an offer.
Okay, and I have to admit, the light bulb went off for me with reference to childcare, because that is on the table as an opportunity for negotiation, along with other dimensions of an entire compensation package. So that's why I brought that up and thought, oh, yeah, we should, I think, distinguish there for the audience the wage and a salary, and as appropriate, overall compensation. And so thank you for kind of sorting that out. Another point on something you mentioned earlier, you referenced that in some states it's illegal to request salary history. Where will someone find the information on which states or which, where is it illegal for that information to be requested?
So for a person to, and it's just to clarify, it's illegal for them to require you to disclose it. They can still present the question. So when you're filling out the application online and there's that required asterisk, they cannot make it required. So to find that information, simply go to Google and type in salary bands, and you'll see the articles and whatever's up to date in terms of which states allow it and which don't. Some cities have even taken a step up to address this if it hasn't been passed on a state level. So you can do a little bit of digging. Maybe a 5-minute Google search will lead you to the resources.
Okay.
And this is ever changing. So what may be there today, you could see some additional information updated soon.
Terrific. When you consider the ideal destination, right, for negotiating, having fairness of wages between men and women, where is there a model? Is there a company that gets, 5 stars for doing it right? Or is there a country? Who's out there doing it in a way that we'd like to see emulated?
Yeah, there are so many great examples, and I'm so glad that you bring that up. On a national scale, a very large scale, a company that has made a major commitment and put their money where their mouth is Salesforce. So Mark Benioff, who is the CEO at Salesforce, he's made a serious commitment to the gender wage gap. And so what they did a few years back was they did an internal audit, and they saw that there were some companies that they have purchased, and Salesforce itself, that had women in equal roles as men, but there wasn't equality in pay. So what they did was they made a multi-million-dollar commitment to bring those women up to parity. And then several years later, they had acquired more companies. They did the same audit for those newly acquired companies, and again, another multi-million-dollar investment to bring those women up to parity. So when it comes to the model of how to do this, it can be expensive, which is why, quite frankly, some companies don't want to do it. They may not have the money to make that investment and to make it real. But I'll give you another example. One of my clients that I've been working with for a few years, they're a smaller company. They have 200 employees. They did a similar audit. We worked together, and they end up bringing their women up to parity as well. And so what it means for a company is the leadership has to be serious. It has to be a priority within the organization. If you're going to say this is equality and we believe in equal pay, then it has to be a priority on all levels to find all of the resources to bring that to a reality. And so your other question was, are there any companies who are doing this well? So Iceland is one of the countries who is really known for how they are making moves in terms of their legislation for equal pay. And the women in that country are just so bold when it comes to seeking equal pay. So you can look at some of the work that they're doing. Now, this brings up another interesting question. When we talk about different societies and how they treat women, we have to also recognize that part of the structure of how equal pay is such an issue and why in this country we haven't moved the needle in over 50 years is because it hasn't been a priority. So if we really want to get serious on a leadership level, that's what we have to do. We have to make it a priority in the different aspects of our lives and our business role.
Mm-hmm. Sounds very similar to a recent discussion I had with a vice president of diversity, equality, and inclusion inside of an organization and talking about it starts with leadership.
Yep.
Terrific. How many years have you been at this life purpose driven work that you're doing, Jacqueline?
Oh, I don't know, maybe 7 years now.
It's been quite some time.
It's been a minute, but this is what I wake up every day. Sometimes people ask me, "What would you do if you weren't doing this work?" I would be doing this work.
Uh-huh.
So this is my life's work, period. And I will say also that this found me. I was on a spiritual journey, really trying to figure out what is my purpose in life, and really had some really amazing opportunities to work with some well-respected organizations early on in my career, but I felt like something was missing. And when I went on that spiritual journey, this work came up and I knew instantly that this was the problem that I was going to solve in my lifetime.
Terrific. And I truly applaud you and appreciate you for putting your efforts into this purpose-driven work, because you are making the world a better place and all of us are learning. We're in your wake, Jacqueline, learning from you. And so let's take this to the individual level, since you have an extensive wealth of experience. What from your vantage point are the significant barriers to individuals actually making progress for themselves in this area?
Part of the barrier, and I want to speak specifically to women because that's who I spend most of my time working on negotiation with. Mm-hmm. One of those barriers is related to the mindset of earning. And I'll share personally, early on in my career, I remember I blew this negotiation. I received a call. That was the offer call. I had interviewed 3 times. I recognized the number because I interviewed there so many times. So it popped up on my cell phone and we exchanged pleasantries. The offer was verbally presented and I'm sitting in my Jeep Liberty, which was my favorite car. And I'm sitting in that car and I still remember thinking to myself and saying nothing aloud, "Oh my God, thank you for picking me and giving me a job." Mm-hmm. And so I was silent for a few seconds, but when you're on the phone, it seems like forever. And the person on the other end said, "Hey, are you there?" And I said, "Yes, I'll take it." So boom, just like that, I had given away all of my negotiation power. Mm-hmm. I was so grateful. So back to your question, that is an issue that hinders a lot of women. Just the attitude of being so grateful and not fully recognizing the value that you bring to that organization. And so there was a book that I read several years ago by Barbara Stanny, and it's titled The Secrets of Six-Figure Women. And inside of that book, she talks about mindset. The mindset of women who are under earners and the mindset of women who are over earners. And it comes down to this. It is the belief within yourself that you can get the job done. That is related to how you express your value and how you advocate for yourself. So that's the biggest hindrance that I see is the mindset.
Mm-hmm. I heard a statistic some while ago comparing a male to a female in terms of them feeling qualified for a job, a particular role. And for men, I want to believe the statistic was somewhere around, they feel that they have to have at least 50% demonstrated success in the qualifications, whereas women, we believe we have to have 70%. And so what does that do? That then suggests that we're going to opt ourselves out more often than not compared to our male counterparts who are like, I can do that job. Yeah, I've only got 50% demonstrated success. And again, don't quote me on that particular figure, but I just remember it was much less than women. Like we feel we have to have so much more. Oh, I have to have demonstrated success, as opposed to, as you've pointed out, the mindset and being of how I see myself as qualified. Yeah, may not have a direct apples to apples on all of the qualifications that an organization is looking for, but it's rare for them to find candidates that meet 100% of the bill.
Yeah. So, that is something that really gets me fired up and standing on the table, because I've even heard it that men will qualify for 1 out of 10 requirements. Women will have 7 and they still won't go for it.
Yeah.
But here's what I know. I know for a fact, if we look at research, we see men most likely get promoted based on potential, and women get promoted more so based on their demonstrated track record of success.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we really have to come in and be advocates for ourselves and really do the internal work of understanding our worth. So there's another book that I love. I love reading, Coach Mo.
Uh-huh.
So there's a book by Brene Brown, Men, Women, and Worthiness.
Mm-hmm.
And I recommend that to all of my clients who are really dealing with the issue of worthiness, because it doesn't just show up in your professional life. It is so integrated into all aspects of our lives. So we really have to do that work internally and on that personal level so that we can take that same confidence and translate that into our professional lives.
When you think about your experience, what gives you optimism, Jacqueline, about the positive change that's occurring?
So much gives me optimism about this. I mentioned one thing is the increased awareness. Whenever you have increased awareness on an issue, it really shifts the focus of people and it helps move the dialogue forward in terms of communicating. When I hear about the research that banning the requirement to disclose salary history is making strides, that gives me hope. When I see Mark Benioff over at Salesforce making a commitment and putting the money behind that commitment, that gives me hope. And then on the individual level, I work with women all over the country, helping them to develop negotiation strategy. And when I get that text that says OMG, and then the ... dots below it, I have just whatever it is, whether it's $1,500, whether it's doubling their salary, whether it's getting an extra week of vacation, all of those things give me hope.
Nice. And Jacqueline, what resources and tools have you created to support women in strengthening their negotiation skills?
So I've been doing negotiation workshops for a few years now and working with women one-on-one. And what I've done over the course of the years is I've looked at different negotiation strategies and different aspects. And some of those methods, they are very successful for men. They're sometimes successful for women and sometimes successful for Black women. And as a Black woman, I saw that I could not negotiate the way that other people were negotiating because of this thing called unconscious bias. So I started developing a framework to negotiate. And so I've created a lot of videos on YouTube. I've created podcast episodes, and I've written 2 books specifically on the topic of negotiation. Well, 1 book and 1 workbook. And so what I've done was I've taken the best practices from my internal work personally negotiating, and then my work working with organizations and working with women individually. And I put those tools together in a very digestible format. So in my book, Don't Leave Money on the Table, when that book was finished, I rewrote the book because I wanted it to be a weekend read. My favorite negotiation books, they're hundreds of pages long. And I love negotiation. I can binge out, I can nerd out on it, but I know that's not the case for most people. Mm-hmm. So I had to rewrite this book in a format where women who weren't familiar with this topic or maybe felt intimidated by the topic could sit down in a weekend, read it, get exactly what they need, and have that conversation the following Monday. So those are some of the resources and tools that I've created.
Nice. Really nice. I know in the coaching space with my clients who are entering into a negotiation, and this is negotiating even beyond, salary. It's even negotiating for reshaping of job or taking on additional responsibilities or what have you. One of the places where we start is what characterizes a successful negotiation? And then who do you have to be in order to be in that space of a successful negotiation to really get the client thinking at a very conscious level about their showing up and what makes for a successful negotiation. And I love the fact that you rewrote the book and did provide a resource that's very palatable for someone to consume in a short period of time, because sometimes just having those tools and that framework is enough. And I also invite individuals to practice saying words out loud.
Oh, yeah.
Practice, recruit someone to practice getting the words out.
That is such a good point, Coach Mo, because inside of the book, that's a huge component of the negotiation strategy, is saying it out loud and practicing multiple times. And I will tell you that when the book came out last year, Don't Leave Money on the Table, someone reached out to me and via LinkedIn, and she said, "Hey, I just got the book. I read it. Can we get on the phone call?" And we know each other. So I was like, yeah, we can schedule a call. And I just thought maybe she just wanted to catch up. She's a fellow coach.
Mm-hmm.
And what she ended up saying was she was in the middle of a negotiation and she felt stressed and she felt overwhelmed. And she bought the book to support me because she knows me. But she didn't expect the book would make a significant impact in her current negotiation, because she was able to follow the framework inside of the book. And the tables turned and she regained her power. And at the conclusion of that negotiation, she reached back out to me again and she wanted to get back on the phone. And I was like, this is weird, but I adore her, right? We have this really strong relationship. So I was like, okay, girl, what's up? And she's like, I'm going to send you a check. She was like, because the amount of money I just made by shifting my negotiation strategy, I don't even feel right keeping it all. I need to send you some money. And that was a very big moment for me because, when you release a new book, my intention was set that it would shift and impact lives and be a tool that women can use. But to hear it from someone that I knew and to hear how she applied that to a business scenario, it really made my heart jump. And it made me so proud that I didn't sit and second guess myself and say, who am I to write this book? Because when we talk about negotiation, we have to talk about imposter syndrome, right? It pops up. Who am I to ask for this? Who am I to request this title change? Who am I to request that I start in a month instead of this time that they want? Or who am I to request additional team members before I take this job? And so when you think about that imposter syndrome that creeps up, I had that imposter syndrome for a short period of time before I really dug into writing this book. And it just goes to show that we've got to push through those moments, especially as women leaders, and really have that confidence in work to say, I have something of value and I'm going to share that with the world.
Nice. Nice. And even for listeners who you've just recently had that negotiation, didn't pan out as you expected, you still win, because as you've just heard Jacqueline describe, and I thank you for the transparency in the internal dialogue as well as the external reality of the dialogue that you're sharing here, it lets others know that, yeah, it may not have been perfect that last time. And now I know what that felt like. And now I know what I will do different. So that experience is gold because you are learning and you now know what not to do, which is part of the process. And so your examples, in particular, your internal dialogue while sitting in that Jeep Liberty, Jacqueline.
Yes.
Awesome. On what you were thinking about after you were in that pause and you had all those thoughts running through your head and you just released the words of, yes, I'll take it. And you learned coming out of that. So you're better off for next time, because we have to remember there will be a next time. And so use whatever wealth of experience, good, bad, and ugly, it's experience that builds us. And so give yourself credit that, hey, didn't really pan out, but now I've worn that experience and I now know what I will be applying differently next time. And so great that even through that real feedback after releasing the book that you received right then, that helps squelch some of that imposter syndrome internal dialogue you had going on. So you are a walking testament to how you move through it. We all do. We all do. So I just wanted to echo that for listeners. Thank you so much for sharing the outcomes of your terrific work as well as your personal, firsthand experience. Before we draw to a close, what final thoughts do you have for our listeners, Jacqueline?
So final thoughts is negotiation is a conversation. It's not a battle. I talk about this all the time and I put it in the book and I've done so many talks based on this. If you feel nervous about negotiation, that's okay. Remember, it's a conversation. And so in the words of Barbara Stanny, she's the author of the book I mentioned a few minutes ago, Secrets of Six-Figure Women. In her book, she has a line that I have written down and it's one of my mantras: feel the fear and do it anyway. And so as a result of listening today, if you decide you're going to enhance your negotiation muscles, I encourage you, even when you feel a little bit nervous, to feel the fear, prepare, and then move forward anyway.
Really nice. And love that quote of negotiation is a conversation, not a battle. Awesome. And before I let you go, Jacqueline, I've got to let's have a little bit of fun. I have 3 just personal, let us get to know Jacqueline questions. You ready?
Let's do it.
What's your favorite sport?
Football.
All right. And the team?
New Orleans Saints. Hashtag who dat.
Who dat? All right. And a favorite movie or actor, actress?
I got to go with Hamilton, the live show, because that's my favorite right now.
All right. I think there are many who share that with you. And then lastly, what do you do to unwind? Just kind of step away and recharge your battery.
Yes. So I am all into plants. So I've been planting seeds and watching them grow. And that is my favorite thing to unwind. My place is filled with plants and I love caring for the plants. I name them. I talk to them. I'm that type of plant woman. And that's my favorite thing to unwind doing right now as we're navigating living in a pandemic.
And if I hear in the background correctly, I think I hear your plant saying, thank you, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Jacqueline. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Coach Mo. I appreciate you inviting me to the podcast. Isn't
it great to connect with a New Orleans fan and the who dat generation? Hey, in terms of Coach Mo Knows, a tip, a coaching question, and a bit of inspiration. My tip this week is to definitely reach out and connect with Jacqueline Twillie on LinkedIn. I will provide her contact information in the show notes for today's episode. Also, be sure to check out her 2 publications. The first, Don't Leave Money on the Table. It's a book and a workbook. And secondly, Navigating the Career Jungle. And as a second part of my tip to support today's episode, I'm including links to help jumpstart your research on salary bands across the U.S. So I'll provide links to salary.com, paycor.com, and SHRM that will lead you to some of the more recent information on what is happening on salary bands across different states and localities, and you can determine what's most relevant for you. As for my coaching question, consider first your beliefs about money. Now, I'm going to invite you to just take 30 seconds and capture in writing or on your device, what are your beliefs about money? So you can go ahead and hit the pause button on this podcast while you complete this exercise. Be sure to set that 30-second timer. Once you've captured your beliefs about money, those ideas that are top of mind for you, ask yourself this question. How does this belief support you in strengthening your ability to negotiate your compensation package with your employer? So give each of those items that you've listed a score between 1 and 10. 1 is basically you're sabotaging yourself, and 10, it's a very healthy belief. So again, jot down your beliefs and then rate each one on a scale of 1 to 10 to determine for yourself where's the most significant opportunity for you to strengthen your ability to negotiate on your compensation package. And in terms of inspiration, this week, we've got 2 for you. A quote I often say is, if you don't ask for it, someone else will. And the second inspiration is a quote from John F. Kennedy. And he said, let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate. Make it a great week. That's a wrap for this episode of Tuesdays with Coach Mo. Showing up here tells me you're willing to invest in yourself and your career. Get additional resources at TuesdaysWithCoachMo.com. Please subscribe and leave a review. I'd love to get your feedback. Till next time, this is Coach Mo signing off.
Tuesdays with Coach Mo.